Hello, my friend. I want you to find a quiet moment, wrap yourself in a soft blanket, and close your eyes. Let go of the worries of the day. Inhale deeply, and as you exhale, feel your body begin to relax. Welcome to a place where time slows down and the moonlight is your guide. Tonight, we journey to a world of silent mountains and ancient forests, where every star holds a story. Prepare to drift into a land where the quietest whispers hold the most profound truths. Now it's time to get comfortable and let go of the day. Snuggle into your blankets, relax every muscle, and let your breathing slow. If turning off the light helps you rest, go ahead and switch it off now. Allow the quiet and the darkness to guide you gently into sleep. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you again tomorrow night. In the heart of ancient Athens, a city of bright light and bustling marketplaces, lived a young man named Arion. He was a quiet soul, a young apprentice to one of the most respected historians in the city. While his peers spent their days debating philosophy in the great halls or practicing with the javelin, Arion found his purpose in the hushed, dust-filled rooms of the grand library. His hands moved with a careful grace over the ancient scrolls, his mind lost in the stories of a past long gone. To him, the written word held a quiet power, a truth more lasting than stone. His master, an old man with eyes as sharp as a hawk's and a mind as vast as the sea, was a man named Lysander. Lysander was a well of wisdom, a living history book to the city, but he was haunted by one particular mystery, a tale whispered in fragmented accounts from across the sea. It was the story of a lost continent, a kingdom of impossible wealth and power that had vanished in a single day and night of fire and earthquakes. Most scholars dismissed the story as a simple myth, a fanciful tale told by sailors and traders. But Lysander believed. He had spent his life piecing together the broken fragments of the story, accounts passed down from Egyptian priests and ancient scribes, all of them pointing to a legendary city beyond the great pillars of Hercules. A city called Atlantis. Lysander would often sit with Arion in the quiet evening light, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, as he spoke of the myths. He described a city of spiraling walls, of canals that glowed with a soft, inner light, of a people who possessed a knowledge far beyond that of the Greeks. They did not wage war with brute strength, Arion, he would say, but with a mastery of the natural world. Their power came not from iron, but from a deeper, forgotten magic, a quiet bond with the earth itself. Arion, a pragmatic young man, listened politely, but his heart remained unconvinced. The stories were beautiful, but they felt like just that, stories. One evening, however, everything changed. Lysander called Arion to his study, a room filled with scrolls and maps, and placed a small, stone tablet on the table. The tablet was old, its surface worn smooth by time and water. It had been found in the cargo hold of a ship that had wrecked off the coast of a remote island. Most would have thought it a simple rock, but Arion saw it for what it was, a fragment of a tool, a piece of something much larger. But its surface held no familiar writing. It was covered in strange, flowing glyphs that seemed to writhe with a faint, inner light. They were not Greek, not Egyptian, not Phoenician. They were from a language that had been silenced by time itself. "I believe this is a piece of the great city," Lysander whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and wonder. "I have studied it for weeks. The symbols are not a map, Arion, but a language. And I believe they speak of a song, a quiet song that the city once knew. But there's a part of the inscription I cannot decipher. It speaks of a heart of stone, and it gives me a great and terrible unease. The scroll that came with it says it was a warning, a final message from a people who saw their end coming." Lysander looked at Arion with a profound weariness. His body was old and weak, and he knew he could not travel. "There is only one person I know who might understand this," he said. "An old sage who lives on a small, mist-shrouded island in the far reaches of the sea. They say he speaks to the stones and listens to the whispers of the past. You must go, Arion. You must find him and show him this tablet. Tell him it is from Lysander, and that the world's most beautiful secret is being forgotten." Arion, though still skeptical, felt a thrill of purpose. This was no longer just a story, it was a journey. He packed a few simple supplies, took the stone tablet, and with the rising sun, he boarded a small ship headed west. The voyage was long but peaceful. Arion spent his days on the deck, watching the vast, calm expanse of the Aegean Sea. The sun beat down with a gentle warmth, and the waves rolled in a soothing, endless rhythm. At night, he would lie on his back and watch the constellations wheel across the sky, feeling a profound sense of the world's immense and quiet grace. The stars were silent storytellers, and in the quiet of the sea, Arion began to feel the world's own slow, patient breathing. He reached the island after many days. It was a place of deep green and profound silence. Mists hung low over the hills, and the only sound was the gentle lapping of the waves on the shore. He found the sage's hut tucked away in a small, hidden cove. It was a simple structure of stone and wood, perfectly at home in the misty landscape. An old man, his hair and beard as white as sea foam, sat on a stone bench outside, his hands resting in his lap. He did not look up as Arion approached, but simply waited, a peaceful, enduring presence. Arion introduced himself and told the sage of Lysander's request. The sage did not speak, but simply held out his hand. Arion placed the stone tablet in his palm. The sage's eyes, the color of a calm sea on a misty day, widened almost imperceptibly as he felt the warmth of the stone. He looked at the tablet, his fingers tracing the strange, glowing glyphs. He did not need to study them, he seemed to understand them as one would understand a familiar face. After a long, quiet moment, he looked up at Arion, his eyes filled with a deep, sorrowful wisdom. "Your master was right to be wary of the heart of stone," the sage said, his voice a quiet murmur, as soft as the mist around them. "And he was right to believe that the power of this city was a quiet, forgotten magic. The Atlanteans learned to channel the very energy of the earth, the slow, peaceful hum of the planet itself. They built their great city not with brute force, but by listening to the pulse of the world, by weaving their own life force with that of the land and the sea. The silent song was the song of the earth, a melody that gave them life and power." The sage's voice grew quieter, filled with a sorrowful knowledge. But as they grew powerful, they grew complacent. They began to take the song for granted. They stopped listening, and they began to use the Earth's energy for their own selfish desires, not in harmony with the planet, but in defiance of it. The sage's eyes were locked on the stone tablet, on the final, unreadable glyphs. And the heart of stone is not a place, young Arion. It is a state of being. The Atlanteans, in their greed and their hubris, lost their connection to the earth's quiet magic. Their own hearts became stone, and the song became a whisper they could no longer hear. The great city was not destroyed in a great flood or an earthquake of the gods. The city sank into the sea, not from an outside force, but from a profound emptiness within. The stone crumbled beneath them because they had lost their own spirit, their own connection to the world's gentle, quiet power. They became a part of the stone they had used to build their great kingdom, their own spirits becoming as cold and as lifeless as the rock itself. The tablet does not show where the city is. It shows where the city went. The old man's words hung in the misty air, a chilling truth that settled deep into Arion's heart. He felt a profound shift in his understanding of the world. It was not a tale of a forgotten land, but a quiet warning, a sorrowful lament from a people who had lost their way. Arion looked at the sage, his mind reeling. But what happened? What was the last song they heard? The sage did not answer with words, but with a slow, deliberate movement. He rose from his stone bench and walked into his small hut. When he returned, he held a smaller, older tablet in his hand, a smooth, obsidian disc that seemed to absorb all the light around it. "This," he said, his voice a low, peaceful rumble, "is the final song. This is the last message sent before the silence. It was found years ago, washed up on a beach in a strange land, carried by a final wave." The sage held the small, dark tablet out to Arion. Arion took it, and as his fingers brushed its cool surface, a vision filled his mind. It was not a sight, but a feeling, a memory of a time long ago. He saw a city of impossible beauty, its canals glowing with a soft, warm light. The buildings were not just stone, but seemed to be living things, their forms spiraling and reaching for the sky in perfect, flowing harmony. The people of the city moved with a quiet grace, their hearts beating in time with the gentle rhythm of the land and the sea. They were a people in perfect harmony with their world. But as the vision continued, the harmony began to fray. The glowing light of the canals grew dimmer, the perfect forms of the buildings became sharp and rigid, and the people, once moving with a shared purpose, now moved with a cold, frantic energy. They began to dig deeper into the earth, not to listen to its song, but to pull from it a raw, unfeeling energy. Their faces, once filled with a serene wisdom, became hard and cold, their eyes focused only on their own desires. Arion felt the beautiful, gentle song of the earth become a faint, distant whisper, and then a final, sad silence. He felt the coldness in their hearts, a coldness that became a part of the city itself. The city began to break. The very stone crumbled, not with a sudden violence, but with a slow, tired resignation. The foundations, once held together by the gentle magic of the earth, now gave way, their connection to the planet lost. The buildings did not crash, but slowly, silently sank into the sea, consumed by the same cold emptiness that had consumed the hearts of its people. The beautiful, Glowing canals became rivers of cold, dark water, and the city, once so full of life and light, became a monument to its own profound and quiet failure. The last message from the city was not a cry of fear, but a whisper of a final, sad truth. They had taken too much and had forgotten to give back. They had lost their way, and in doing so, they had lost their home. The vision faded, and Arion was left holding the small, dark tablet in his hands, his own heart filled with a deep, quiet sorrow. He did not speak, but the sage understood. The great flood was not the cause of their end, the old man said, his voice as calm as the mist around them. It was the grave of a people who had already died. The world felt their absence and welcomed them back into its great, cold embrace. Arion stayed on the island for several days, not to learn more of the ancient, silent language, but to simply sit in the quiet peace of the misty hills. He learned to listen to the whispers of the wind, the soft murmur of the waves, and the slow, constant breathing of the earth. He no longer saw the world as a collection of brute forces, but as a living, breathing being with a song that was always there for those who took the time to listen. He felt the quiet power in the trees, the enduring patience of the stones, and the ancient wisdom of the sea. When he finally left the island, he was not the same young man who had arrived. He no longer saw the world as a skeptic, but as a believer. He carried the tablets with him, not as a historical curiosity, but as a powerful, living truth. The voyage back to Athens was as peaceful as the one that brought him there, but he saw it with a new, awakened mind. The stars no longer seemed so distant, and the sea no longer seemed so vast. They were simply a part of the great, quiet harmony of the world. He returned to Athens and went straight to Lysander's study. The old historian, his face etched with worry, looked at him with a silent question in his eyes. Arion did not speak, but simply placed the two tablets on the table. He told his master everything, of the misty island, of the old sage, of the tragic truth of the Atlanteans. He spoke of the silent song and the heart of stone, and of the chilling vision he had been granted. He spoke of a people who had become so consumed by their own power that they had forgotten to listen to the very earth that sustained them. Lysander listened, his eyes wide with a profound and sorrowful understanding. When Arion had finished, the old man reached out and touched the second, smaller tablet, and he felt the lingering sadness of a people who had lost their way. He looked at Arion, his eyes no longer filled with a restless curiosity, but with a deep and quiet wisdom. So the city of Atlantis was not destroyed by a flood or a fire, Lysander said, his voice a low, gentle rumble. It was consumed by its own silence. It was lost not because of what it lacked, but because of what it forgot. Lysander spent the rest of his days teaching not only of the past, but of the importance of the present. He would tell the story of Atlantis, not as a grand, exciting tale of a lost kingdom, but as a quiet, powerful warning. He taught his students to listen to the world around them, to respect the earth, and to always, always remember the quiet song that holds all things together. And Arion, his apprentice, would often sit in the grand library, surrounded by the scrolls of history, and he would smile, a quiet, peaceful smile, knowing that some truths are not to be found in the written word, but in the peaceful, unwritten language of the heart. The great city of Atlantis was gone, but its final, silent message had been heard, and in that quiet hearing, the world was, in its own small way, saved from the same fate. In the far north, where the long night stretched out like a silken blanket and the air tasted of clean, cold snow, there was a village named Fjordhelm. It was a place of quiet, enduring strength, nestled in the curve of a great fjord. Its people lived simple lives, their days filled with the rhythms of the sea and the seasons, and their nights were a sanctuary under the most brilliant sky in all the world. They were a people who knew the stars as a shepherd knows their flock. The constellations were not just lights in the dark, they were a great celestial map, a guide for their ships and a comfort for their souls. In this peaceful village lived a young man named Fenris. He was not a sailor or a hunter, but an apprentice to the village's wise old star reader, a man named Håkon. While the other youths trained with axes and nets, Fenris spent his days in Håkon's stone hut, learning to read the quiet language of the cosmos. He learned the names of the constellations, the Great Bear, the Serpent, the Star Hunter, and he memorized the slow, perfect dance of the planets. He learned to read the sky not for prophecy, but for peace. To Håkon, the stars were a library of ancient memories, a song of cosmic harmony that had been humming since the beginning of time. Fenris, with his quiet, patient soul, was the only one who seemed to hear it as deeply as his master. But one night, as Fenris sat on the high bluff overlooking the fjord, his heart filled with the familiar, peaceful wonder of the night sky, he noticed something was wrong. A small, brilliant star, a tiny point of light in the tail of the serpent, was gone. It wasn't a quick, blinking flash. It was simply not there. The silence it left behind felt heavier than the dark around it. Fenris blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. The star was gone. He felt a shiver of unease, a cold sensation that had nothing to do with the night air. The next night, he watched the sky with a new, quiet intensity. He saw a second star, a faint, distant light in the eye of the serpent, begin to flicker. It pulsed slowly, like a dying ember in a fire, and then, with a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, it winked out of existence, leaving behind a profound and empty blackness. Fenris felt a pang of sorrow, as if a quiet voice in the cosmic chorus had suddenly been silenced. Over the next few days, more stars began to fade. At first, it was only the faintest ones, the ones that only a dedicated star watcher would notice. But soon, even the brighter lights, those that had been a part of the constellations for as long as anyone could remember, began to dim and disappear. The great, celestial map of the sky was beginning to unravel. The people of Fjordhelm did not notice the change at first. They were too busy with the work of the day, with the coming of winter, to look up at the sky with the same quiet attention that Fenris and Håkon gave it. But as the long nights grew longer and darker, and the stars became a scattered, broken pattern, a subtle anxiety began to creep into the village. The sailors found it harder to navigate by the stars. The fishermen felt a growing unease on the water. The children, who had always gone to sleep with the stories of the star creatures in their minds, now looked up at the night sky with a vague, unspoken fear. The beautiful, comforting blanket of the stars was becoming a threadbare, moth-eaten thing. Fenris went to Håkon and told him what he was seeing. Håkon, his old eyes now tired and dim, looked up at the sky with a deep, knowing sorrow. "I felt their silence, my boy," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "I felt their light fading in my bones. It is happening. The silence is spreading." Håkon then told Fenris a legend so old it had been forgotten by all but a few. It was the story of the great cosmic serpent, Jormungandr, who was not a beast of chaos, but a being of profound, patient light. It was said that the serpent had woven itself into the fabric of the universe, and its scales were the stars. The light of the stars was not fire, but a memory, a story of an ancient time when the world was new and filled with a pure, quiet magic. Each star was a whisper of a cosmic truth. And the serpent's breath, slow and gentle, kept the stories alive. But in this modern age, Håkon explained, the people had grown too loud. They had filled their lives with clang and chatter, with the demands of the day, and they had forgotten to listen to the quiet, subtle song of the cosmos. The serpent's scales, the stars, were fading because the people had stopped listening to their stories. The memories were being forgotten, and the light that held them was winking out. "The serpent's breath has grown weak, Fenris," Håkon said, his voice filled with a profound sadness. "The world is forgetting the past, and the sky is falling into a cold, empty silence." Håkon looked at Fenris, his eyes filled with a deep, solemn purpose. "There is only one hope," he said. He reached into a carved wooden box and pulled out a small, circular device, a beautiful old astrolabe made of polished silver and stone. It was not like the one Fenris used for navigation. This one was far older, its rings and dials glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. "This is a key," Håkon said. "An ancient tool of the star weavers, the quiet mystics who once mended the constellations when their light grew faint. You must find the last of them. They say she lives in the highest peaks of the great mountains, a place that has been untouched by the noise of our world. They say she can reweave the lost light." Fenris's heart swelled with a feeling of awe and quiet terror. He was not a hero. He was just a boy who watched the stars. He was a simple, quiet soul, not a champion for the whole world. But he looked at the astrolabe in his hand, its gentle light a tiny beacon of hope in a world that was growing dim, and he knew he had to go. He would go to the mountains. He would find the star weaver. He would try to sing the silent songs back to the sky. He prepared for his journey in the quiet of the night, taking only what he needed. His warmest furs, a pouch of dried berries, a water skin, and the ancient astrolabe. He said goodbye to Håkon, who gave him a final, knowing nod, and he walked out of the village, leaving the warm glow of the hearths behind him. The air was colder here, the silence even deeper, and the sky above was a shattered canvas of fading light. His journey would not be a fast one. It would be a slow, methodical climb, a quiet pilgrimage into the heart of the great, sleeping mountains. He walked for days, leaving the valley behind him. The trees grew more sparse, their branches dusted with a fine layer of snow. The world became a quiet, white expanse of hills and peaks. He found a strange peace in the cold, silent landscape. He was so far from the noise of the village now, so far from the hurried clamor of human life. He could almost hear the great, silent song of the earth beneath the snow. As he climbed higher, the air grew thinner, the wind began to whisper a lonely, mournful tune. He found a small, ancient stone tablet half buried in the snow. He wiped the frost from its surface and saw a faint, flowing inscription. It spoke of a path of whispers and a song of frost, words that meant nothing to him but filled him with a sense of purpose. He continued his climb, a tiny figure against the great, vast sleeping mountains. He came to a narrow, high pass, a place where the mountain parted, leaving a deep chasm between two towering peaks. The wind here was a fierce, cold breath, and it sang a lonely song. Fenris looked across the chasm, and his breath hitched. Spanning the distance was a bridge. It was not a bridge of stone or wood, but of a shimmering, almost invisible light made of pure, ethereal starlight. It pulsed with a faint, soft glow, a living, breathing thing. It was impossibly beautiful and utterly terrifying. He looked at the astrolabe in his hand, and he felt a faint hum from within its silver rings. The astrolabe's needle, which had been still for the entire journey, now trembled, pointing directly at the bridge. This was the path of whispers from the tablet. He was not on his map. He had to trust the quiet, unwritten song of the world. He stood at the edge of the chasm, his heart beating a slow, steady rhythm, looking at the bridge of light. He knew that the next step he took would be the most important of his life. He would either cross the light or be lost to the dark. He took that first step. It was a silent, terrifying leap of faith. But as his foot met the bridge, there was no solid ground, only a feeling of profound peace. The starlight beneath his boots felt like cool water, and as he walked, the light swirled around his feet, illuminating the darkness of the chasm below. He walked on, the bridge humming with a soft, ethereal melody, a song so beautiful and calming that it brought tears to his eyes. It was a sound he had never heard before, but it felt like a home he had always known. The chasm below him was not just an empty space, but a library of all the stories that had ever been lost to silence. He walked on, feeling the weight of all that forgotten knowledge, and with each step, the starlight beneath his feet grew a little stronger. He reached the other side and stepped off the bridge into a hidden valley. The air here was still and quiet, filled with a deep, silent peace. He looked up, and the sky above the valley was a perfect, brilliant canvas of stars, a stark contrast to the fading sky beyond the mountains. In the center of the valley sat a small, humble hut, its roof covered in a thin layer of snow. A woman sat on a low, stone bench outside, her hair the color of moonlight, her hands moving in a slow, graceful dance. She was weaving, but her loom was empty. She was weaving with nothing. This was the weaver of the sky. Fenris approached her with a quiet reverence. She did not look up, but simply continued her work, her movements a slow, rhythmic meditation. "I have been waiting for you, Fenris of Fjordhelm," she said, her voice as soft as the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. "I felt your pure heart from the moment you left your village. You have the soul of a star listener." Fenris showed her the astrolabe, and she smiled, a deep, knowing smile that reached her eyes. "This is a tool of the Star Weavers, a key to the forgotten language of the cosmos. I cannot do this alone. I need your help." The great serpent, Jormungandr, is not sad because of a curse, but because of a simple, quiet grief. The world has forgotten how to be still. It has filled itself with a noise that has deafened it to the gentle hum of the stars. The serpent's breath has grown weak because it is no longer heard. Its scales, the stars, are fading because their stories are no longer being whispered to the world. They are dying from loneliness. The weaver showed Fenris her loom. It was made of threads of pure, shimmering starlight, a great, empty canvas waiting to be filled. "I cannot reweave the stars with what has been forgotten. We must find the memories, the stories that have been lost and return them to the sky." She handed him a small, perfectly smooth stone. "The astrolabe will guide you to the places where the star memories have been left behind. You must listen to their whispers, and this stone will hold their last, quiet song. You must be a memory gatherer." Fenris took the stone, and for days and nights he walked the quiet valley, guided by the astrolabe's faint hum. He found the memories of the stars in the most peaceful places, in the stillness of a frozen lake, in the silent slumber of a hibernating bear, in the delicate, sleeping roots of a great tree. He would kneel, close his eyes, and listen. He would hear the quiet memories of a star, the distant sound of a mother's lullaby, the soft, patient sigh of the wind on a hill, the steady, rhythmic beat of a peaceful heart. He would capture each memory in the small stone, and with each story he gathered, the stone would glow with a little more light, a little more warmth. He felt the profound sorrow of a world that had forgotten how to be quiet, but he also felt the enduring, gentle magic that was still there, waiting to be heard. When the stone was full, glowing with a soft, beautiful light, Fenris returned to the weaver. She took the stone, and with a gentle, patient grace, she began to pull the threads of memory from it, weaving them into the loom of starlight. As she worked, a soft, beautiful melody filled the valley, a song of memory and homecoming. Fenris took the astrolabe and, following the weaver's quiet instructions, he began to project the threads into the sky. The astrolabe hummed with a deep, happy sound, and as the threads of starlight touched the empty, broken spaces in the sky, a star would begin to form. At first, it was a faint flicker, a small, shy light. But then, it would grow stronger, bolder, until it was once again a perfect, brilliant point in the cosmic tapestry. One by one, the stars returned. The great bear slowly became whole again, its paws and head once more made of solid, brilliant light. The serpent was mended, its eyes once again filled with the gentle glow of 1,000 beautiful, quiet memories. The sky above them filled with a new, vibrant life, and with each star that returned, the air grew a little warmer, the silence a little more peaceful. A profound sense of rightness settled over the land, a feeling of a great wound being healed, of a great, silent song being sung once more. When the work was done, the sky was a perfect, brilliant canvas of 1,000,000 stars, a breathtaking sight that had not been seen in 1,000 years. The weaver looked at Fenris, her eyes filled with a deep and gentle gratitude. "You have mended the silence, my boy," she said, her voice now a part of the soft, new song that filled the night. "The memories have returned to their home. Now, you must return to yours and teach your people to listen. Teach them to look up at the sky not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. Teach them to listen to the song of the stars, and the light will never fade again." Fenris said his goodbyes and began his slow journey back down the mountains. The path that had once been so difficult was now clear, and the cold that had chilled him to the bone was now a gentle, refreshing breeze. He walked for days, and with each step, he saw the world around him with new eyes. He saw the quiet, sleeping grace in the great trees, the steady, patient rhythm of the river, the small, enduring light in every living thing. The world was full of song for those who took the time to listen. He returned to Fjordhelm a changed man, no longer just a stargazer, but a protector of the silence. The villagers, looking up at the sky, marveled at the return of the stars. The constellations were once again whole, brilliant and comforting, their light a perfect map in the dark. No one knew how it had happened, but everyone felt the deep, peaceful sense of rightness that had returned to their lives. Fenris went to Håkon, who looked at him with a silent, knowing smile. Fenris told his master everything, of the path of whispers, of the weaver, of the stone filled with memory. Håkon listened with a deep, quiet gratitude in his eyes. He then led Fenris to the village center, where the children were gathered. And for the rest of his days, Fenris taught the children not just the names of the constellations, but their stories. He taught them to sit in the quiet of the night, to look up at the stars, and to listen to their soft, ancient song. He taught them that the most powerful magic in the world was not in a flash of light, but in a moment of quiet, patient listening. And the people of Fjordhelm learned to listen once more, and their world was made whole again, a beautiful, peaceful place in perfect harmony with the great, silent song of the stars. The end.